Moments ago, Pope Francis wrapped up his two-day visit to Ireland, and today he did ask for forgiveness on behalf of the Catholic Church for sexual exploitation by some clergy in Ireland. Now, this has been the first papal visit to Ireland in almost 4 decades. Francis called the abuse a scandal and betrayal, and he said he would seek a greater commitment to eliminating it.
A que fueron sometidos tantos menores.
In a special way, we ask pardon for all the abuses committed in various types of institutions run by male or female religious and by other members of the Church. And we ask for forgiveness for those cases of exploitation through manual work that so many young women and men were subjected to. We ask forgiveness.
Now, that was at a Mass earlier today, but we want to show you the scene just moments ago in Dublin as the Pope arrived at the airport to depart. Take a look at this. And as you see, that is the Pontiff Francis leaving the car that has driven him around through so many locations during his two-day visit to Dublin. As we said, this was the first papal visit in Ireland in some 39 years. And to talk about what was heard and how people have been reacting, we're reaching out right now to Fancy Ryan. She's the director of the Loyola Institute of Theology at Trinity College in Dublin. And she was at the Mass at Phoenix Park earlier today, and she joins us now on the phone. So Fancy, thank you for joining us today.
No problem at all.
Well, we're looking right now at visuals. Again, this was just moments ago where the Pope was departing as he says goodbye to the Irish Prime Minister and also to some of the people that are gathered around the airport. And I do wonder, what would you make of the reception that the Pope got, considering that Ireland during this papal visit is so very different than the Ireland when Pope John Paul II visited some 39 years ago?
Well, I think he got an absolutely amazing reception. I'm actually standing here at a window looking out at the crowd still milling. Like, I'm about a couple of miles away from Phoenix Park now, and crowds are still milling down the road. I don't have the exact numbers for people who were there, but there was a huge crowd there today, and a number of people around me were commenting about how it's just so nice to do something like this to counteract all the negativity that's been around, because there is still, I mean, there was people of all age groups there, which again is very impressive, because the popular story you hear is that the Church in Ireland is dead. But the statistics actually show that the Church in Ireland is very much alive and comparable to other parts of mainland Europe. It is a lower practice rate than when John Paul II came, but then I suppose it was a different country. Whether better or worse can be debated, but it was a different country in terms of people, we were chatting about it today, like people had nothing else to do anyway. So you would go to listen to John Paul II. We had, in most of the country, we had one television station. People didn't really, it was a cultural Catholicism. Today, people, some students of mine said to me recently, it's radical to be a Catholic in Ireland today. I think people have been touched too. The apology today was a very profound apology again. And I think it's another great sign of Francis, because I was involved in another interview this morning, and I happened to be speaking with one of the people, one of the survivors, as they call themselves, and they met with Pope Francis last night, and he listened very attentively to them, and he promised them that he would do more or less what he did today, that he would take into account all that they had said to him, and expanding, because the focus has been very much on clerical sexual abuse, whereas there are other issues of people who are in industrial schools, mother and baby homes. I think another very significant thing that happened...
Fancy, let me just jump in there very quickly, though, just because I want to acknowledge the fact that we're looking at, right now, Pope Francis as he gets on board an Aer Lingus plane that will bring him back to Rome. But you do mention the apology that he said today, the fact that he acknowledged the abuse that was committed by clergy as well as other institutions where people were negatively impacted by the Catholic Church in Ireland. Do you think that is the first step of reconciliation? Does that take the issue far enough for people in Ireland?
I think it's not the first step, because it's one of many steps that has taken place. I think a very important step actually took place when the Taoiseach, our Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar, admitted that it was a lot of the problems were actually society, culture and church. So there's a threefold responsibility for the things that happened. Society, culture, the Irish culture of the time, and the church. I think from the perspective of many of us in Ireland, it's a significant step on the road from the perspective of some of those who were deemed themselves survivors of the abuse, who are very involved in committees and responses. They seem to have a different, I'm not sure that they will be as happy, because they seem to have different demands being made. But I think a lot of the people, the general population in Ireland, will take on board very much the notion of his asking for forgiveness, and also his ecclesiology, which is very much, we are the church and we all need to ask for forgiveness, because we were all in different ways involved in this. Like, people brought their daughters to his mother
sorry to
and child home.
interrupt. Fanchi, I do want to jump in right now, because we want to tell people that we are looking at this Aer Lingus flight right now as we speak to Fanchi, because this is the plane that is carrying the Pope. It is departing Dublin right now. As you can see, it is building up speed on the runway, ready for taking off. So overall, Fanchi, not a lot of time, but very quickly, would you say this was a successful papal visit from the Vatican's point of view?
Well, it was absolutely successful visit from the Irish people's point of view, as was evidenced yesterday, last night, when he visited the homeless, and again today in the Mass in Croke Park. So I would say it's something that will give, if the Irish Church, if leadership in the Irish Church wishes to take hold of this and move forward, I think there will be many possibilities. I hope Pope Francis is happy with his visit. He seemed to be. And many people commented on the amount of energy he had for a man of his age. So he seemed to be very involved and engaged, particularly meeting with people, meeting with children, families and people.